If there's one thing we can all agree on, Breath of the Wild loves its references to older Zelda games within the franchise. It's a great way to pay homage to games that many people grew up playing. The most notable example for me was a quest at the Woodland Stable titled Balloon Flight. Chimay references both Skyloft as well as the Loftwings from Skyward Sword. Many locations within this depiction of Hyrule also share names with characters from other Zelda titles. Sometimes, entire structures from said games will be found within Breath of the Wild's world, such as the Sacred Springs and Lurelin Ranch. So, when I checked Twitter the other day and found this tweet posted by John Cartwright which implied that Lurelin Village was Wind Waker's Outset Island, it got me to boot up my copy of Breath of the Wild to check it out for myself. Arguably, the biggest piece of evidence lies in the lookout post hugging the shoreline of the village. It's always felt out of place, but it would make sense if it was supposed to be the very same one we see in the Wind Waker. And, if we try to match up the camera angles of both games, the dock from Breath of the Wild is exactly where it should be if this was indeed Outset Island. Also, some people are saying that apparently there are some similarities with the house placements, but personally, I don't really see that. Though, as we can see from the footage, Lurelin Village has a lot more land exposed above the ocean level. This is very noticeable once you take a closer look at the base of the lookout post. It extends down below the water, unlike the one from Breath of the Wild. Though it is true that the passing of thousands of years could explain the huge difference in geography. Both locations do feature giant steep cliffs in the background, and two in particular appear to match up quite well with Breath of the Wild. If we check the top where a forest should be located, instead there's only a big grassy field. What is worth noting is that the palm trees from both locations are very similar in design, and it makes sense from a geographical point of view. Both settlements are located right by the shoreline, in what we can assume is a tropical climate. When you strip away all of the extra details from Breath of the Wild's houses, they all have the same compact feel and share similar design choices. Again, it's similar, but nothing that can confirm this theory. Though while the roofs appear to be made from the same material, each of Breath of the Wild's shelters are built around a singular tree, which, from the interior, acts as a sort of support for the structure. And we can't forget about the bigger structures of Lurelin, more specifically the chest game and inn, that are designed to look like boats. Given how they are presented, this appears to be more of a design choice, rather than an actual boat that was converted into a building. Speaking of boats, because Lurelin Village is found off the coastline of the Necluda Sea, it's known for its fresh fish that's caught daily and sold by the fishermen. I suppose the sheer amount of boats on the shore could convince some of its connection to the Wind Waker, a game that seems to like boats. Upon doing some research, I also discovered that this connection between both locations was discovered long before the tweet, over 2 years ago by a Reddit user known as Bellydrum. And they brought up a good point, mentioning how most of the houses from Lurelin are positioned to the east side of the island. This happens to be very similar to the placement of Outset Island's buildings. A very interesting observation, for sure. Breath of the Wild does have a side quest that involves uncovering underwater treasure located between 3 rocks that make up a triangular shape. Though if we investigate Outset Island, nothing of resemblance can be found. There are some areas around the island that house submerged treasure chests, though it doesn't really help, as this kind of thing is found everywhere within the Great Sea. Talking to the residents in Breath of the Wild's village doesn't help with this question either. The most we can get out of this location's history has already been said. It's a small fishing village known for its fresh supply of seafood. Arms does give you a hint for sailing on rafts, as he mentions that Korok leaves can help the player control the wind themselves. Very similar to the Wind Waker item, but this connection is more so a coincidence. There is one thing that's worth discussing. In my video talking about how players were misled by the prophecy, I briefly mentioned the Zonai and their structures, many of which have their signature swirl symbol, the Lome labyrinths being prime examples. But this same symbol appears somewhere else, and it's not on Zonai architecture. Within Lurelin Village, if you focus on the tops of the buildings, you can see the familiar shape of a swirl. And at the Palmore ruins, the player can complete a shrine quest that involves the repair of a stone monument. One of the locals of that area is shown deciphering whatever was written on the structure. And since that same location is home to several Zonai columns, it's very likely that this monument was built by the exact same race. Another random thought, it's very possible that the symbol portion of it was built using luminous stones. A dead giveaway to this is how it only glows during the nighttime. Getting back on track, if the Zonai symbol can be found all throughout the village, and one of the locals is able to decipher the text on a Zonai structure, it's very possible that these people are descendants of the Zonai tribe. I won't get too much into this idea as that would warrant a whole other episode, so if you want to see that, let me know down in the comments. So why is this important? Well, after closely inspecting the houses of Outset Island, there was something that stood out. If you go to Sturgeon's room, there are two different plants that both feature a spiral-like symbol on the pots. While it may be a coincidence, it's something that I found to be interesting. This goes full circle back to the question asked at the beginning of the video. Is Lurelin Village the same as Outset Island? I don't think so, though I do believe the fishing settlement was heavily inspired by it. A lot of the comparisons I brought up can honestly be brushed off as coincidences, except for the lookout post, which I still feel is strong evidence to imply the connection. But that doesn't mean that the village from Breath of the Wild has nothing worth talking about. We've already made the connection of it to the Zonai, and as I said before, that has a very good chance of becoming an entire video. And that's all for today. Thanks to all my patrons, as your support is greatly appreciated. If you also want to appear in these credits, check out my Patreon page from the link in the description. But as always, never feel obligated to do so.